Now, in the midst of a new era of clean renewable energy, sun, wind and water, these are the new rock stars that will replace old fossil fuels. To dwell on this subject is Lilongeni Unoovene, a renewable energy engineer and consultant.
Thank you very much, Ivan.
Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Appreciate it, sir.
Now, explain in simple terms, what is the term renewable energy?
Renewable energy is termed as green energy, which is energy produced from natural energy sources, which are replenished on a human timescale. Now, renewable energy comes in various forms. It can be wind, hydropower, or bioenergy through the use of biomass. And also, it can be implemented in huge installations or small-scale installations in both the remote and semi-urban settlements.
Now, how is this meant to help or make our lives better? Whether you live in the rural or the urban, how is it supposed to, improve or help us improve our lifestyles and way of living?
Thank you. The use of energy in and of itself is to improve your living standard by having access to refrigeration, by having access to TV for information dissemination, and also having a radio-powered or solar radio-powered systems that can give the individual more information on what's happening out there. So really, it's just to improve your life with regards to your quality of life. So if you have a TV, if you have the ability to charge your cell phone, and you also have the ability to store your wet food or your wet produce, I believe that's where the energy resource can derive the most value.
Now, speaking about rural areas, how can the government stakeholders, help, in terms of awareness, to bring more light on renewable energy?
The government has taken numerous steps in engaging the community members, in allowing them to have access to clean and affordable energy. However, I believe the government can still do more with regards to incorporating the private sector as well as the donor funders, for example, to subsidize these renewable energy systems, because the remote areas and semi-urban areas still do not have access to energy, and the upfront cost of that energy remains a huge hurdle that we need to tackle. And then just to give you a few stats, mind you, there is more than 300,000 households in the rural areas, and 80% of those individuals do not have access to green energy, or they do not have access to electricity. Less than 20% and less than 20% of the individuals living there do not have access to refrigerated systems. They do not have access to lights, you see. So the school-going children there do not have access to clean solar energy, for example. They still use firewood and, fossil fuels to make a living.
I think also people don't understand the danger that fossil fuel has on our environment. And maybe as a mechanical engineer, can you just share a little bit more light on that?
Firstly, fossil fuels like smoke, can cause respiratory problems. They can cause breathing problems, and then in the long run, one can develop some lung disease or some lung cancer, and especially your elderly people are actually prone to these diseases because their immune systems cannot, withhold or maintain that constant smoke and inhalation of smoke. It has, adverse effects on
human health.
On human health, yes.
Now, as an expert, of course, you provided me with quite a few pages here with some stats.
Yes.
But what constraints do you see, in accessing grid connection for, people seeking renewable energy, or most importantly for people who are in rural areas?
Firstly, extending the grid infrastructure in remote areas is costly for the renewable energy distributors. Imagine the people living in, for example, in Porus, in the Kunene region. Yes. They live approximately 900 kilometers away from the grid. And, setting up grid infrastructure in those mountainous areas can be time-consuming, and it's also expensive. Can I give you an analogy, for example?
Yes, please.
Namibia has a population that's almost reaching 3 million, and it's vast. Okay, and then we have a population density of 3.7 individuals per square kilometer. Okay, so for example, individuals living in the poorest community in the poorest community in the Kunene region, let's say 20,000, for example. Now, this is just an example.
Yes, yes.
So serving those community members, and 80% of them already don't have any economic derivation. They don't have any means to make some money for themselves. So how are they going to pay for that electricity? So if I have to give an analogy of an elephant, if I have to give you if I have to give an elephant to 5 people, it will cost those people more money. But if I have to share that elephant amongst 20 people, the unit cost of that elephant decreases substantially. So that's also the reason why the electrification rate has been slow, is because the unit cost to serve those communities will not prove substantial for the return on investment for the regional energy distributors.
Does the government have adequate legislation in place to promote renewable energy use in Namibia?
The government does have legislation in place. For example, we do have the renewable energy policy dating back in 2008, which allows the renewable energy to be deployed in certain areas so that we don't have the dependence on the import of electricity. Yes. Mind you, we import most of our electricity from South Africa and the neighboring SADC countries. So that is just to make sure that we do not have a dependency on energy imports. And we also have the Electrification Act dating back in the 2000, which allows renewable energy stakeholders and renewable energy players to participate in the energy market.
If you had the power to change anything to make renewable energy accessible to everyone, what is that one thing that you would do to change and help people access it very easily?
Firstly, I would create awareness. The reason why we're having this conversation is for us to create awareness and also to honor our late founding fathers' dreams to have all Namibians have access to energy. I believe it's our duty as the youth to inform or to create awareness around this issue. Therefore, I would create awareness. I would assist the government in setting up processes and procedures, perhaps, and also methods and strategies on how to implement these renewable energy solutions in the remote areas. So firstly, awareness, and also combine forces with the private sector, because they have the technical know-how and they have the expertise in capacity building offers, especially with regards to end user training, because there's another thing of supplying an energy resource to an individual in the remote areas, but it's also another thing to educate or to build capacity within those remote areas for them to be able to generate some form of economic value. For example, you can set up small establishment like a textile factory that does clothing like traditional attire, and then with the use of solar, for example, you can have salons, barbershops in an area like, for example, Goriagap, just an example. And then you capacitate the people living there so that they can derive some economic value through that natural or through the abundant natural resource of the sun. This is something that has not taken place yet, but I believe if we can set up small economic activities in those remote areas so that we can realize so we can use the sun more productively, I believe that would be a game changer.
Let's say my name is Matthew, I live in somewhere in Ohangwena, and apart from the government doing what it has to do, I want renewable energy in my village. What are the financial procedures? Where can I seek help? Whose door can I knock, to get this renewable energy, for my village to access it?
Okay. The government does have, for example, minus the government, but let me just put the government at the forefront. We have the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and they have a sub-department of the Solar Revolving Fund. Okay, now that Solar Revolving Fund is mandated to offer low-interest loans to individuals living in remote areas. Therefore, one can approach the Ministry of Mines and Energy under the auspices of the Solar Revolving Fund to acquire a 5-year loan so that they can acquire their system. And the interest rates are quite affordable. Apart from them, we also do have our local institutions that have products in place that are able to finance that cater to solar energy finance. So our local banking institutions have a product that is catering solar at the moment.
The reason I asked that question is because someone is probably listening and they would want to know what other way or other means they can have access to renewable energy, and they may not have the needs. Yes. Now explain the concept of lease to own agreement and how it would help rural people.
The lease to own agreement is basically termed, or it's basically the same as a hire purchase agreement. You know, you have your furniture stores that sell you TVs and cupboards and beds, for example. Now you have a window period, or you have a period in which you have to pay off that system. And then once you pay off that system, that system or that component, or that product rather, the system becomes yours. So the lease to own really is just a fixed financial model that allows the customer to pay off their system in agreed installments over a period of time. And within that period, the supplier or the energy producer is responsible to honor the warranties of that particular system. So it's really just a hire purchase.
What benefits does the energy dock system have over the other renewable energy systems, and their disadvantages in rural setups?
The energy dock is one of the systems I deal with, and we have done numerous installations on those energy dock systems. So they come in two sizes, not two sizes, but in two forms. They come in 12-volt direct current. They come in 220 alternating current. Now, 220 alternating current is the normal electricity around us. Your appliance at home uses 220 volts because, for example, if water seeps in or on that system, it can cause electrification. Now, the 12-volt DC system is a more stable current system, and it does not cause electrocution. Now, the benefit of having the 12-volt DC system in remote areas is because remote areas have infrastructure like mud houses, they have corrugated iron houses, and there's a lot of uneducated people there. So it's also enclosed. It's an enclosure, so that system basically prevents tampering. It prevents tampering, so everything to the charge controller, to the DC board, for example, it's a bit technical.
Yes.
It's encapsulated in that box, so no one can really
access it
like that. Yes.
Cause harm to anyone.
And a system like that is able to give power to a refrigerator, a TV, lights, and it also can give you power for Wi-Fi, and really just improves a person's living standard in the remote areas.
In terms of affordability, how does that look?
It's quite affordable. I don't want to give you the exact figures now, but it's quite affordable, and most of our banking institutions are prepared to finance the products that we deal with.
Do you think the government is doing enough to bring awareness to people that they should use more renewable energies, especially in rural areas?
The government has steps. They have put steps in place to promulgate this electrification. However, I believe that the government can still do more, but by allowing more legislation and policies in place targeted to the remote areas, because the legislation that we have currently normally focuses on urban areas, but on remote areas and areas that will not be receiving the national grid soon, I believe more can still be done. And also they can also subsidize the acquisition of these products, and also by allowing donor funders from the international market to create a demand for these products in these areas. I believe that would be the tipping scale.
Now, you've shared quite a lot. Someone probably is now asking, all that you said now, where can I get this information?
Thank you. That information, you can call me, or I will give you my contact details.
Yeah.
I represent a huge company, and yes, they should call me so that I can direct them to the correct places so that we can give them a proper solution.
Let's just say someone didn't hear about this interview, but they're still out there and they're quite interested on renewable energy. Where can they go? Has the government, made places available, or information available, centers where people can actually go and learn more about renewable energy?
That's a very important question. So the avenue of information dissemination, you can approach the Ministry of Mines and Energy, because there's a whole list of solar installers that are approved by the Namibia Energy Institute, and you will find my contact details there. And yeah, so basically they can go to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, or they can look for me personally.
Yeah, so maybe is it okay if you share the number, because I'm sure someone is ready
to jot down the
number, email, Instagram, Facebook, or anywhere where they can get access to you or this information.
Okay, I'll share my number for now. So my number is 08140. Sorry, 08140 31630. I repeat, 40 31630.
One more time.
08140 31630, and I will help you I'll run you through the system, what it does, especially the energy dock, and I'll also give you options of finance institutions you can approach, and I will walk you through that process so that you can have your clean energy today.
How can the private sector and NGOs help rural people to adapt to renewable energy use?
The private sector and the government can simply combine forces. The private sector can provide capacity building and end-user training to people living in remote areas, and then the government can create an enabling environment for the private sector to implement their projects seamlessly by putting up legislation and policies in place that allows the participation of the private sector to do what they do best, and that's to implement projects and also do capacity building within those areas, because supplying a system again is another thing, but maintaining the system over a long period of time is another thing. Another thing I would like to point out is the quality of systems that are flooding the market is worrisome. For example, most of the products that are being financed do not outlast the financing period. For example, if you take lead-acid batteries, lead-acid batteries has a lifespan of a year or two, depending on how you use the battery. Now, imagine a Pole from a remote area. He acquires finance for a system with lead-acid batteries. Now, that lead-acid battery only gives you 1 or 2 years. And mind you, the battery already is half of the cost of the solar system. Okay, so now you have to pay the system for 5 years, and within 5 years, your battery is losing power,
Yeah.
or it's no longer giving you the capacity that it was promised.
Yes.
You see, as opposed to going to lithium phosphate batteries.
Yes.
So I deal with prismatic cell batteries, meaning that these batteries have never been used before. Most of the batteries, for example, that are in the market right now are second life batteries being advertised as first life batteries. So just to give you a little bit of information, so a second life battery is a battery that was in the automotive industry in Europe. Now these batteries are retired batteries. So after a certain period of time, they are removed from the EV vehicle, and then it's repackaged again and sold to us as a first life battery. So that's really information that people don't really have. And those batteries can last. The batteries, the prismatic batteries that we deal with, prismatic is really just the battery from lithium,
Yes.
mined from the ore into the battery, never been used before, can outlast you up to 10 years compared to a lead acid.